Is that is that how you like to be with a
Well, it started now, so the was sort of just a warm up,
Oh,
warm up for my intro. But
okay.
this is the intro. Hello, everybody. It's John Gallagher Portero for Bristol and Toronto Comedy. We're here for another video. This time, I'm not joined by John McInnes. He is sadly not available. But with me instead, we have a special guest. This is part of the BLC chat series, which I guess it's a thing now. I guess we've been having interviews with people, and I've been trying to call them BLC chats. A nice informal chat about improv with our guest, and our guest today is Max Francis. Hello, Max.
Hey John, I love the fact that you're branding it hard. So that's always good to see.
You know, people, it needs branding. It needs to be very obviously said what it is, what I'm
Yeah.
doing, and what's
Well,
going on.
why do anything unless you can really show off?
You know, that's all it is. I'm showing off an improv company that isn't currently happening at the moment.
Yeah,
It's not even working.
I was there before all of that sort of started, I guess, in the Kitchen Rules Theatre days. Was that what it's called, Kitchen Rules?
Yeah, well, we should probably start with that first question then. So, Max, tell us like how you got into improv, where you were when you started improv, what happened in Bristol, and where you are now.
Yeah, sure. I started doing improv in 2017, somewhere like that. I started off because I was working on a film that we were doing some casting for, and one of the people that we were looking to cast was Peter Baker, who is a phenomenal improviser and actor, just wonderful. And we went to see Murder She Didn't Write and Closer Each Day as part of that sort of casting process to suss him out because he was one of the sort of quite major roles in the film. And I'd never seen live improv before. I was kind of like vaguely aware of improv through things like Comedy Bang Bang. So a little bit of the American scene I had an awareness of people like Paul F. Tompkins and that sort of group of people. Which I'd quite liked, but not really seen live or been aware of live. Went to those shows, was very taken with it, was very impressed by it. This was just when the Bristol Improv Theatre was kind of kicking off. So I decided to do the Discovering Improv course with Stephen Clements and Caitlin Campbell, who are both amazing, both improvisers and teachers as well. And so they very much and they'd both been in the iteration of Murder that I saw, Murder She Didn't Write. So I was very pleased to do that. Then carried on with their courses for about sort of 6 months or so until the first show I did was with you coaching, John Gallagher.
Oh, I see. I didn't
Not,
know if there was
not,
anybody
not
else
the,
behind me.
I was saying like the audience were coaching the first show I did. Remember that show that you, the audience, coached me at? No, that doesn't work at all. Yeah, which was I think that was a what's it called? It was a show that we put together within the space of a day. You used to do them. It was a unscripted players thing because this is when I started doing unscripted players stuff.
Oh yeah, like an improv carousel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, that was what they were called. Yeah, it was an improv carousel. So yeah, did that. Started to get into the long form scene in Bristol. Followed on with that for a while with the Kitchen Rules Theatre classes. Started a few teams, and then yeah, I mean, sort of carried on with bits and pieces in Bristol, a couple of shows in London, until I moved out to Toronto. I actually realised a little bit before quarantine and everything started that I'd done, I think, a couple more shows in Toronto than I ever had done in the UK.
Wow. How long were you in Toronto at that point?
I mean, I'd only really been. I mean, I've been here for about a year and a half now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I must have been here about a year by the time that I'd done as many shows
Wait,
because there's just so many opportunities to do shows here.
wait a minute, Max. Are you telling me that you started out as a Bristol improviser and now you're in Toronto and you've been there for a year and a half?
Yeah, that's correct, John.
The script worked perfectly.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, my Toronto experience is yeah, I mean, I've been doing stuff with Second City here, and a couple of other places as well. Um, yeah, as I say, there's a lot more opportunity to do shows here because there's just so much stuff going on. Well, there was until the world fell to pieces.
Yeah. Oh, great. And you're over there right now, still living it up in Toronto. Did you ever think of coming home at all, or did you just find it much just easier to just stay there?
I actually, what for quarantine and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've got a job here, which is great. I've got obviously a number of links with the improv scene here as well. So I do sort of continue to do weekly rehearsals with a few different groups just on Zoom. Um,
Oh,
but also, I mean, I just applied for my permanent residence as well.
great.
So I'm starting the process to try and stay here for longer. So we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. So I guess the first big question that sort of pops to mind is the differences between the UK improv scene and the Canadian improv scene.
Uh, Well, I mean, broadly speaking, it's and I mean, this is all obviously all just my experience as well, because I can't speak for every organization and every person's experience with various different groups and things. But I mean, the UK scene is younger in a lot of ways, and it's less formalized in terms of like you come here and you kind of immediately know where to go. There's Second City, which is this institution when it comes to not only improv but your sketch and I mean they do stand-up classes, they do clown classes, they do all sorts of different comedy stuff. So just generally when it comes to comedy, they're really established in a really significant way. So they have really broad offering of courses, a lot of links with other cities and other places, and also they've got professional, like very good shows and touring companies going on all the time. So there is kind of like a more established core to it here than there is in the UK, because I felt in the UK there was starting to be that sort of thing growing, and obviously there are smaller groups which are very long running and very successful and very good as well. I mean, I remember going to some free association shows when we were up in London, and the quality of their improv was fantastic.
Mm.
But they are a small group comparatively with some of the bigger institutions out here.
And compared to other institutions in the UK, the FA is considered quite big. So that's quite interesting
Yeah.
to see the difference of that. Going to Toronto is such a huge thing in terms of in terms of a performer going to the next level. Obviously, you can move to London and try it out there, but like you were saying, it goes London and then if you go to the United States, if you go to America or Canada, that's where the scene really is bigger, faster, better, more enhanced. What was the motivation for you as an improviser to go from Bristol to Toronto?
Well, I mean, separately from improv, I'd got a work permit to go to Canada. So I I was looking for a change anyway, just in terms of lifestyle and everything, and it all sort of fell into place at the right time. Part of the reason that I came to Toronto specifically was 100% the fact that the improv scene here is the best in the country, because there's the most people here. Like there's more people in Toronto than there is anywhere else in Canada, and I mean So I say there's Second City. There's also two other fairly firmly established theatres here, which are Bad Dog Theatre and the Social Capital Theatre, both of which have slightly different stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, immediately just looking at Toronto as a place to go, it's like, oh, okay, there's 3 different improv theatres. And this is not even sort of touching on comedy clubs and other places that people do stuff. This is 3 sort of pretty dedicated improv theatres to start with. So yeah, I mean, it felt like I was at a stage in the UK where, and I'm still broadly speaking at that stage. I think a lot of people find themselves at that stage of being okay at improv, like having grasped some of the fundamentals and being able to play a scene okay and competently enough, but ultimately looking for more reps.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the lessons that you get from all different kinds of teachers. Now, I've been taught by lots of different kinds of people from lots of different backgrounds, who are varying levels of successful as well. And the lessons are always pretty much at their core saying similar things.
Yeah.
Some people put things across in a far more in a way that is far more intelligible and far more easy for me to understand. And I'm sure that that's, you know, different with different people as well in terms of the types of teachers that they gravitate towards. But the lessons at their core are relatively similar once you've done classes on, you know, game, you've done classes on generating premises. You know, the lessons remain the same, but it's the reps that you need to like really seriously go further with it. And whether that's, you know, just finding a group of people that are dedicated to rehearsing all the time, or it's, you know, going somewhere where you have a broader spectrum of people to play with all the time.
That's such a good point. Yeah, because some groups find it hard to do a rehearsal once a fortnight.
Yeah.
And that to me is insane. For me, it should be once a week. Rehearsal should be at least once a week.
But the thing that you find like here as well as definitely in the UK as well is that, you know, people have conflicting priorities, and that's completely fine. You know, not everyone is, you know, wanting to do improv 7 nights a week, and nor should there be that many people that are wanting to do improv 7 nights a week.
That would just be really sad.
Yeah. So basically you end up with a larger pool of people to play with here, because I wouldn't want to, you know, box people into like rehearsing all the time, or like pushing to rehearse all the time, especially when, you know, they've got their own lives to attend to. I mean, even with some of my like groups out here, like with the conservatory class for Second City that I was doing, they have conflicting priorities in the sense that not everyone is an improviser first and foremost. For example, you know, some people are actors first and foremost, and that's what they're doing. And improv is another string to their bow when it comes to acting. Some people are writers, you know, so they don't all necessarily want to just drill reps all the time of improv stuff.
Yeah. That's super interesting. That, I guess the reps is just hard to come by, because they're, especially in Bristol. Maybe we'll talk about London in a second, but like with Bristol especially, you've got your improv theatre, you've got Bristol Longform, but those are the main institutions, I'd say, in terms of learning. But even then, in terms of getting reps in and having open mic nights or open shows where you can just like jump in and jam, that's once a month.
Yeah.
So for example, in Toronto, if you wanted to get your reps in, is there like a jam every week, or is there like spaces to do all that sort of stuff, or is it just classes where you get your reps in?
Well, when you know, status quo was not living in your house all the time. One of the things that like I'd started to see a lot of is that people who are around my sort of level, where they've done the beginner classes and they've started to try and do more shows and get out there and get the reps in. A lot of people were turning to producing their own shows because social capital theatre in particular, and I believe this is true of a place called Comedy Bar as well as Bad Dog, you can rent the space and you only need, I mean, it's not super, super expensive to rent the space for an hour or two, and they have multiple shows on in an evening. So a lot of people would, put on a monthly show of their own, whether that was duo shows, whether it was some narrative format that people had worked out, and then effectively use that as kind of a jam show where you approach people ahead of time, usually through the Toronto Improv Community Facebook group. You just put a call out and say, hey, who wants to be in this show? And you'll be inundated with people saying, yeah, put me in it, put me in it, put me in it. So you'd end up with a lot of people producing sort of smaller shows, some of which worked really well and they continued with it on a regular basis, some of which needed a bit of tweaking and maybe went away for a while. There was one show which was very much loved, which was a duo show that a woman called Mary Fan was organising, which was just a monthly duo show. I think it ran for a year, and it was just a really good atmosphere a lot of the time. But yeah, it's a lot of people producing their own shows is one of the initial points of entry. And then, classes and certain classes you get into have class shows as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the main form of entry with a community and the atmosphere in the community is big and nice in Toronto. I guess you're more than likely to be able to put on your own shows. I still think we here in Bristol we still haven't got there yet. I think we've got maybe like 1 or 2 teams that put on their own nights, and then you've got your improv theatre, and then you've got the shows created by the theatres.
Sure.
So yeah. That's super interesting. I guess it just depends on how big the community is. Yeah. Would you say that, is there been a show, say one of these shows who put on their own nights, has there been a show like that you've seen in the year and a half that you've been in Toronto that has sort of just taken off? Like they started out just doing shows on their own, and then they've just got this following, or they've just started, in a way, making it big, but being more popular than the other shows?
That's a good question. I mean, there's the thing with a lot of the types of shows that I'm talking about, is that it's the type of shows that you end up going to. And I mean, I used to go to some shows sometimes when I wasn't performing, and I'd go along. I'd be like, "Oh, hey guys, how's it going?" And they'd be like, "Oh, you up tonight? You up tonight?" I'd be like, "No, I just came along, for a drink and to watch the show." I'd be like, "What? What the fuck are you talking about? Why are you not? Why are you not like doing the show?" I mean, sometimes on those sorts of nights, I would end up getting like roped in to do the show anyway, because I'd show up and they'd be like, "Oh, we got a spot free," and you just do the show. But a lot of the types of shows I'm talking about are more beloved by other improvisers than they are by sort of like civilian audiences. I was about to say
those goddamn civilians.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the thing is that like there's tiers to shows. Yeah. So like the very top tier in terms of I suppose. Well, yeah, I mean, because you start to get into sort of sketch territory when you talk about Second City shows. Is the thing is not necessarily improv, but they use improv to write sketch. So, but yeah, like Second City main stage is kind of where everyone's like sights are set. The really successful, really good people. That's the pinnacle for a lot of people. Even if you just do it for a one run or whatever, it's a good mark to have on your CV, I think, because a lot of the very successful teachers here have done it at some stage. But then you've got, I mean, like there's stuff at Bad Dog Theatre, which is pure improv, which is more the sort of thing you're talking about, I think. Like there's a show, for example, called Hookup, which is just so funny. And there's another one called Beer Comedy, which again, like two of the best improv shows I've ever seen. They run weekly shows in normal times. Beer Comedy is just, a series of different improv groups, one after the other. A little bit of variety in this. There'll be a duo, there'll be a less experienced team, and then there'll be some very, very experienced teams who just absolutely destroy. Every time I've been to that show, I've just been completely blown away. But then Hookup as well is something, and which is a really good example of like a narrative show kind of taking off, partly based on its premise having sort of appeal beyond an improv audience, because it's a show where they'll interview two people in the crowd, single people in the crowd, and then they'll do an improvised narrative of what it would be like if those two people got together.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super simple, but they'll just interview the person, they'll interview the people that they're with, create a bunch of characters off the back of that, and then just sort of fly with it.
And it's the same cast?
There's a rotating cast. I've been a few times, and there's a few people that I've seen more than once, but there's like a fairly large cast that kind of rotates around a bit. Because as I say, it's a weekly show, and it's a very, very popular show. So they want to be sure that they can run it, but also they've got very, very good improvisers who've got other commitments in the show. So yeah, it's a great show though.
Talking of, that's also a really nice introduction to the styles of improv that you see in Toronto. So primarily we, talking of long form, I'm guessing there's like quite a big long form following, inspired by American style long form. But you said there's narrative stuff as well. How's the what are the factions like in Toronto in terms of short form, narrative, long form? Are they as deadly and as aggressive as they are in Bristol?
There's so it's complicated. I don't personally know a lot of people in the sort of short form sphere, but I know a few people who've done short form shows here and that. I think I've done a short form show or two at different points in time. I did a show with a bunch of kids once, which was a short form show. Yeah, it was bizarre. There's a friend of mine, Jonathan Bosco, who produces this month. Again, he produces a monthly show off his own back, and he does it with a team of kids called the Junior Mints, which is like a team of children he's put together that do improv with a group of adults each month.
Where does he find these children?
I think he's a like a camp counselor.
Oh, okay.
So I think it came out of that type of thing at some point in time. I don't know the full backstory on it, but a really fun show, and it's a short form show, and it's got a bunch of games and stuff, which is great. So there are people doing various short form shows and stuff, but I'm also like that guy Jonathan Bosco. I'm also on a long form team with him. So what I would say though is that there's an organization here called the Assembly who do long form in the way that you would sort of understand, that you would look at it really, because people use long form techniques and they use sort of game of the scene techniques in all sorts of different shows. But the Assembly is really the heart of long form improv in Toronto, based on my experience, because they kind of grew out of the Second City closing down their long form department. So they had a long form conservatory course, which they decided to shut for whatever reason. And a bunch of people sort of basically took that as an opportunity to use similar curriculum and use a similar set of teachers to start their own thing, which is now the assembly. So that's really the long form side of things. Then Second City is more focused on like using improv as a tool to write sketch a lot of the time. And then you've got Bad Dog, which is more narrative focused from what I've seen. There's a lot more narrative shows there, but you do get other styles of improv going on there as well. And then Social Capital is kind of a free-for-all, but in terms of the teaching they do, it tends to be slightly more grounded, relationship focused, maybe slightly closer to what IO would do, but there's not really direct analogues with the American schools here. Toronto's kind of an island in terms of it. It doesn't conform directly to the American schools. So it's not like this is your UCB, this is your... There you can kind of look at like assembly would be more UCB style, but they have very different approaches to certain things, as do the Free Association, from what I understand, in London.
That's cool. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about you, Max.
Okay.
Been too busy talking about
Do
the
you write
third
these
character.
questions ahead of time, John?
No, we've been busy talking about the third character in this duo.
Sure.
Toronto, obviously, being the third character.
Sure.
But what do you think? What do you think? What do you think your role is now as an improviser compared? What do you think your role was as an improviser when you were in Bristol to where you are now? So, in other words, maybe you could answer the question as, or you can see the question as like, how have you changed as an improviser?
Oh, interesting. It's hard to be particularly introspective, I think, because obviously I'm not watching myself. I suppose one of the things here that I was less fond of is a lot of the time you have to really rattle through things.
What do you mean?
So a lot of the shows are quite short. You don't often get a lot of stage time. You'll be doing a Harold in 15 minutes.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, which is tight.
Super tight.
So I do find that like I've definitely had to step it up slightly in terms of coming out big and quick with things. I feel like in the UK and in Bristol in particular, there was like more of a focus on kind of letting things breathe. And here there is like a sense, a lot of the sorts of nights that I was doing at one point in time, of a competitive comedy scene, not a million miles away from what I imagine stand-up might be like, but not as toxic as that. But there is a slight sense of competition sometimes. So definitely, if it's taught me anything, it's taught me to like come out with big clear offers off the top, especially if you're playing with people that you don't necessarily play with all the time. That being said, I was also doing some duo stuff with a friend of mine where we would purposefully practice silent scenes and letting things breathe and really slowing down and big emotions. And they were some of my favorite shows. Just like having like a 5 or 10 minute set with him to almost always try and fuck each other, but it was always very rooted in some kind of real emotion.
So you'd say you're probably like a little bit quicker on your feet in terms of getting your idea out, your premise idea out now. Do you think that was something that you struggled with when you were in Bristol, or do you think it just, or do you think most of the stuff that you do now you struggled with, or you just didn't have, or you just didn't know how to do in Bristol?
I think 100% of it is like anything I've learned or progressed with has been through continuing reps. I definitely feel like I took a step back when I got here for a while.
Yeah.
Because the conservatory program at Second City, I had to audition 3 times to get into that.
Wow.
And the assembly, I'm in a house team with them now. Not house team, sorry, a grad team. They've got different kinds of teams. They've got house teams, grad teams, and something else. Can't remember the other one, but I'm in a grad team with them at the moment. So I have like a team that we rehearse regularly with. But it took a while to get to that point, to get through their 101, 201, 301 courses and everything to get to that stage. Mm-hmm. So I feel like now, annoyingly enough, it was sort of this year is when I was starting to feel like I was getting back to a place of being on a kind of level footing maybe with where I was at in Bristol, because I had groups in Bristol, I was doing regular reps in Bristol, and I had to sort of kind of start from scratch in some ways when I came here. And, learn a very, slightly different style of comedy as well, in terms of, what people find funny here doesn't necessarily translate backwards and forwards.
Your Tesco references and your...
I was throwing Tesco's references all over the place, and people just weren't not picking up on it.
I know. Your lifts and apartments don't make sense over there.
Yeah. I mean, I would do a scene, and, there's one... very fancy character and one character who's much less fancy, and then there would be a second beat of that scene, and I would come in and I would say to the fancy character, Mr. Waitrose, it's me, Mr. Tesco's, and people just were not responding to it, and I didn't understand, so I would label someone else as Morrison's, and they weren't. It was no end of frustrations, John.
What would they say? Would they just be like, "Oh, that's a funny name I have"?
Yeah, I mean,
Tesco's, that's Scandinavian.
I mean, they would usually do the classic good improv move of "You must be crazy or drunk."
Is that actually that was? I was going to ask a question about that. Like, what's the worst? What's the worst move that you see a lot and you get a lot from other improvisers? So being told that you're crazy and that you're drunk the entire time, especially with such a good premise as you are Mr. Tesco.
Yeah, I mean, people calling each other out as being wrong is just, and it's not always necessarily a direct block, but just people calling each other out as wrong.
Well, what do you mean as wrong? As in
Well, so I remember there was a scene I was doing once in kind of a jam show, and this girl went and sat down on a chair, and there was another chair sort of next to her, and because of the way that I came out for the scene and stuff, I felt like I came out slightly slow and stuff, so I was like, I don't really want to go to the other chair, I want to do something else in the space, so I sort of crouched down beside her, so she's sitting in a chair, and I'm crouched down beside her, and it's weird. Yeah, it's obviously weird. And her opening line to me was, and I didn't have any initiation in mind or anything. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go crouch here and we'll see where it goes. We'll just let it breathe and develop. Mm-hmm. The first thing she says to me is, "What are you doing?" I was just actually, that's it. Actually, now I think about it, that's what annoys me. Is it's where people don't. They don't take the opportunity to assume knowledge.
Making an offer, right? They don't want to make an offer.
Yeah, and they'll just sort of back away from making any kind of offer. It's frustrating because I watch a lot of it, and it's always tough to watch.
That definitely sounds like a move that a lot of new improvisers anywhere would make. But what about native to the Toronto scene? Is there, or higher up in the advanced levels, are there any moves that just that don't really work, or just sort of fuck you over, but you see it more in Toronto than you do in Bristol?
I mean,
because I want to try and I want to try and put these Canadians on the pedestal. The main reason why I'm interviewing you here, Max, is to get these Canadians to show me what the fuck they're doing, what they're doing wrong. Highlighting.
I think one of the things for me that was like drilled into me in Bristol by everyone who was doing the sort of more professional levels of shows. So especially the two shows that I mentioned earlier, Close Reach Day and Murder She Didn't Write, is to commit to character and not to wink at the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people here at the very highest levels wink to audiences in a way that is so funny and so successful and just so genius that I'm like a little bit blown away by it. And I'm like, wow, okay, so you can do that and make it work and be funny. Brilliant. I think the thing is that it takes a certain level of ability and practice. And I mean, like, so watching Middleditch and Schwartz recently, Thomas Middleditch is an obvious example of someone that I'm talking about in this context, in that he has so much experience
Mm-hmm.
that he can do those winks to audience, and it works, and it's beautiful, and it feels comfortable to be in that moment, and it's great. My problem is where people aren't that experienced and aren't as good as that. And I've definitely been guilty of this many times, where they'll wink to the audience in a way that undercuts the scene or sells the scene out or goes for a quick joke. And then they're not sort of able to recover from that. And the scene's kind of dead. Which is really frustrating to watch, because I'd rather watch something which really commits and sort of finds the funny rather than gets sold out for a joke. But definitely a lot of sort of selling things out for a joke I have seen. But I think, I mean, again, I don't think that's a uniquely Toronto thing.
Okay. I think the pattern of good improvisers sort of having that wink to the audience is that it doesn't feel like they're winking. I guess that's the trick to it. They can sort of have a wink to the audience, but they're in character. They're committing to their character, and they can go straight back into it, like Middleditch does in the Netflix special.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen it as well, where somebody winks at the audience and then they don't know what their character was, and then you could just sort of see the veil fall.
Yeah, and then it's gone.
And then it's gone, and then you're like, fuck, what do I go?
I mean, even like I've literally seen people sort of direct their way out of those situations.
They'd be like, we see.
Well, yeah, or like they'll self-edit, or they'll say, or they'll literally say things like, "Someone sweep this," and I just, it's just poor form. Poor form.
Yeah,
a very British reaction to poor form. Yeah.
Well, if you so one of the main notes that you got from Close Reach Day and Murder She Didn't Write is commit. So a lot of commitment. Is there like something that you got drilled when you were in Toronto? What's the Toronto equivalent of commit? What's their big rule?
There's not one, because I've had so many different teachers since I've got here who are espousing different schools of thought when it comes to improv. That it is really hard to say. I mean, I've had a couple of teachers who were taught directly by Keith Johnstone, for example. But then I've also had teachers who are, very much deep into the UCB language and philosophy, and then others that have completely different approaches from either of those two as well. So it's really a teacher to teacher basis. Because even the assembly where they're doing game of the scene, they're doing heralds, they're doing all that sort of stuff, it's a different teacher every week pretty much. So you really do get a lot of different perspectives, and then you pick and choose what works for you, because I really think I've seen there's two performers here that I think are really great examples of people who I've seen play well together. And I know, based on taking classes I've taken like more classes from one than the other, but I've definitely heard the other one speak on a number of different things, and seen him do shows as well, and that's Rob Norman from the Backline podcast, who used to be one of the big guys at Second City. His book is really good, by the way, actually, as well. And Ken Hall, and they both have, who is he's in Umbrella Academy and stuff. He's amazing.
Oh, cool.
He plays the Pogo. He does the motion capture for Pogo the monkey guy.
That's a nice little. Like extra bit of knowledge there.
Yeah, he's great, and he does clown, he does improv, he does all sorts of different stuff, and he has a duo thing which is very much like clown mixed in with improv. Incredible improviser, amazing guy. But he's coming at it from like a much more feel it out, feel the room kind of clown techniques. Maybe more in line with some IO type stuff, just in terms of the language that I know how to describe this sort of stuff. That's feels more where he's coming from. And then Rob Norman on the other side is far more mechanistic, game heightening. Like if you read his book, it really breaks down kind of what's funny and what's not funny, which is like on a really like analytical level. And you can see him like occasionally, like when he's on the back line and stuff, like you can really see the gears turn, like he's really processing and working out good moves, bad moves, and where to take it. And will come out with incredible, and they'll both come out with incredible stuff and both play on teams together and it works. But obviously they've got very different approaches. And I think that's one of the big things in Toronto is that you do have a lot of people doing it with a lot of different approaches and backgrounds. I think very often they'll start out at Second City and they'll, rise through the ranks. But it's definitely taking the lessons and the styles that appeal to you and that work for you as well at any given time.
I think that's the advantage of having such a big scene. Is just there's something for everybody, isn't there?
Exactly.
Which is, I think, with Bristol. Maybe not for London. I think London is the odd one out in the UK, but other cities in the UK, there's only ever one or two organisations.
Highlander rules, yeah.
Highlander rules, absolutely. There must be only one.
Yeah.
But with London, there is so much as well that there is something for everybody, and luckily, the London scene is getting bigger. But
yeah, I mean, this is
Bristol's getting bigger.
On, like musical and stuff like that as well.
Oh my god, yeah, there must be so much.
Yeah.
I did have another question. Damn it! Your insightful knowledge about improv from two different worlds has stopped me from asking my question. Billy Merritt from he did UCB stuff. Great performer. He was something that he mentioned about the differences between American and British style long form is he went to the FA, the Free Association, and he watched the show, and one of the notes that he said about it was that that a lot of British improv is we're very we're kind of serious. We find a game or we find something fun and then we play it like we put the jigsaw pieces in, like it's like a domino effect. What comes next? And it's very formulated. And his assessment of the way Americans do long form, or the style that he sees or something he teaches and he does, is that they're a bit more, they're more able to go to different directions, completely different ones. It's much more free. There's more possibilities, and you can sort of goof around a little bit. Is that something similar to the Toronto scene? And if it is there something? Actually, no. Let me change the question. Do you wish British improvisers would do something like a Canadian improviser, or vice versa? Is there something that you miss, or is there something that you've noticed that British improvisers sort of would be better off doing this thing that you've learned in Toronto?
Oh, I see. So one of the things that I miss about sort of improvising with people in the UK is that generally speaking, I think you can veer a little bit darker with your comedy in the UK.
Oh, that's
Just
interesting.
naturally, that's kind of the feeling I get, in that you can come out with something that's a bit like kind of fucked up, and people would jump on it. Maybe that's just like some of the circles that I've moved in and things, and maybe it's partly that. But I definitely got a sense that that people would come out with things which were um, like, yeah, I mean, I suppose dark or morbid, that sort of humor. I do miss a little bit. Um, in terms of what people do differently, though, it's hard to say because I suppose, yeah. I mean, it comes back to the kind of commitment stuff. Um, I do like that I could feel like I would go to a show in the UK and I could watch an improv show in the UK where no one ever breaks character for a second.
Okay.
Like, you walk in the door at Murder She Didn't Write, and there's people like handing out, like leaflets or whatever, and they're in character. You go to the start of Close Reach Day, and they're in character, doing a tableau at the start. They're in character and they stay in character. I definitely miss that here, and maybe it's just that I haven't been to the right shows. But there just feels like a sort of a looser sort of flow to kind of improv shows here. I guess that's partly to do with the fact that the pinnacle of where you get to in terms of shows here is rarely improv.
Hmm.
It's improv sort of maxes out here, and then the like real impressive sort of bigger shows, it's sketch more so. Like
So,
the Second City main stage stuff is sketch.
so it's a bunch of slacker improvisers, huh? No commitment at all. They're
It's
there
more.
with their they're there in their blue jeans, hand resting against the back wall, just arms crossed, not giving a shit.
Yeah,
Caps on backwards.
smoking a rolled up maple leaf. Yeah, it's more a sense of like there's a feeling that people are kind of like, more often than not, like working out ideas in improv shows, and that's one thing that maybe I've seen a little bit more of here as well, is people coming in with like pre-programmed bits almost,
Okay.
which can be a little bit jarring sometimes, because I've seen like fantastic improvisers kind of like throw a scene off, some like very rarely, but like by doing something that I can tell they've done before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the funniest scene that you've been in that you can remember? Or what's the proudest scene that you've been in? What's something that you've really enjoyed?
Oh God.
Is there so many, Max? Is that what you're stalling about?
No, not at all. I mean,
Oh no,
very,
don't say that.
very, very close to the start of when I got here. I did a class with a guy called Andrew Fung, I think his name is. Let me just double check.
Andrew Fun?
Yeah, Andrew Fung. Yeah,
Sounds like
he's he's in Kim's Convenience, the TV show. Really, really funny guy. He has learned from great improv teachers and stuff, and he just like occasionally does classes, sort of dropping classes here and there. So I went to one of those, and I did a scene with him in the class where I think I was like, it was one of my like very like it's like an opening type line that I will do from time to time, but I've definitely done it more than once. Which is, endowing them with something about them having come back from the war. And it was all him, in terms of he just is crazy, crazy good at just reacting to things and making everything come together and work beautifully. But it was just a scene between a husband and wife where I think I was the wife, and he'd come back from war, and I didn't know how I felt about him anymore. Um, Yeah, that was a fun scene. But I mean, like, so a lot of like the more memorable scenes for me are scenes that we ended up sort of workshopping a bunch through the conservatory program. So we're using improv initially as a driver to kind of figure out premises for sketches.
Mm.
So I mean, one which like we came back to a number of times. Oh God, there's I mean, they're hard to articulate fully, but because they're just so odd. I mean, one idea which I had, which never sort of like got entirely fleshed out, was doing Sean Connery's Drag Race,
Is this
where it
an
just
idea that you improved and then you tried to write for a sketch?
it was an idea that I came up with, yeah, and it's never quite worked. But it was just the idea. Yeah, the idea is basically that it's Sean Connery doing Drag Race and just saying some of the things from that. It was always trying to find the right context for it, but never quite worked. So just be like, bring out my girls, that sort of, yeah, sashay away, all that sort of.
That could only happen in an improv class. That shit.
Yeah, well, that sort of nonsense. But in terms of, oh God, I had, yeah, some of these are difficult to sort of describe to you fully, other than we had one called Seed Collector, which we tried out on stage a couple of times, and it just wasn't it wasn't quite there. It was basically I was like playing a video game in the vein of Stardew Valley
Yeah.
with my girlfriend and showing her the game and explaining it to her. And we've just got to this area in the game where it's like a post-apocalyptic, like radioactive wasteland where everyone is sterile, and they all keep calling me, like my avatar, the seed collector, and like asking me to get cum for them so that they can
Again,
reproduce.
again, this shit can only come up within an improv scene. No normal human being could sit down and write this. You'd have to improvise it first.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Oh, and then I'd also started doing some song stuff with a few people as well. We started just trying to come up with some comedy songs for our show,
That's great.
but yeah, that's it. It starts to develop out of improv a little bit into how can we use these ideas for something else.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of thinking about the experiences in Toronto for you, of what you've been saying, using improv as a gateway into all these different areas that you wouldn't normally be able to do.
Yeah,
And I guess that's the reason why it's so popular over there. It's just it breaks through with the sense of community and the amount of shows that you can do and the amount of classes and teachers. You can break through into so many different things. That's really, really nice. Hey, well done, Canada, well done, Toronto. Good stuff. When we do a freeze frame of
I'm just being still.
yeah, I know. I was thinking in my head, wouldn't it be funny if it actually did freeze,
Yeah.
and then it just broke off the entire video? Um, I think that's a nice place to end it.
Cool. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, never a chore. That was a question. Answer the question, please. Do you want to do a quick improv scene to finish off?
Yeah, sure. Let's do a scene.
So this is something new that, looking back at the other Bristol chats that we've done, we normally do a show with the guest. We do a Billy Boy show, myself and John McInnes. But seeing as McInnes is doing another show today, we'll just do a quick scene.
Sure.
Let's see. Is there anything? What's a word? What's a word that you've never heard before, but you've heard it in Canada?
Oh, loony.
Loony.
Yeah.
Loony. What's a loony?
It's a name. I believe it's a name for a $1 coin.
Oh.
And then $2 coins are called toonies, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
Okay, cool.
Do a scene off that. Yeah. Listen, I could bag all this stuff up for you. I could. But I'm not gonna.
Jonathan, never have I respected you more than I do right now in this moment. Me, the CEO of Tesco's, coming down here to get my every. You'd think I'd shop at Waitrose. I'm not shopping at Waitrose. I'm shopping here in my own store. And for you not to bag my stuff up for me and to treat me like a regular customer, 10 out of 10, buddy.
You mean it?
You goddamn right I do. And do you know what? I've got a position as CFO that needs filling, my friend.
I'm just a bagger. I treat everybody with the same disrespect as I did with you. Honestly, when you came down the stairs, I didn't know whether to brown nose you or to do as the company manual says, and I went with my gut, and now I'm CFO.
Yeah, I mean, and do you know what cinched it for me is the way that you awkwardly didn't quite make eye contact while I was inputting my card details. Mwah!
I couldn't. I couldn't. I didn't. Honestly, I was a little bit frightened.
You know what? You look like you spent all night smoking weed and then got like an hour's sleep and came into work like kind of still a bit stoned.
You got me. You got me there, sir. You got me. You got me. You got me. My god.
This guy.
This
is it. I want the everyman running this business. You know.
Oh my god. That is such a huge relief. That is such a huge relief to hear you say that. Yeah, I'm super. Do you mind? Can I? There's a couple of customers behind. Is it okay if we just continue this conversation while I bag this customers up as well?
Hey, buddy, you're the CFO. You tell me.
What? What? Just like that? Just like that? I'm in charge?
Oh yeah, I don't go around promoting my low-level employees to senior management positions all the time. I mean, this has happened.
Okay, I guess I'm sorry. This is just a big shock. I guess I don't have to work down here then. I could go up to the office.
I mean, you're the lazy stone 15-year-old employee. I mean, you do what you do you at this point, you know? You're going to be running the finances for this whole business. So if that's how you want to prioritize your time, it's all good with me, buddy.
We cut to Mr. Tesco at the monthly board meeting at Tesco headquarters in London.
Yeah, you're goddamn right. I put a 15-year-old in charge of our finances. And what?
I just walked in the room, Mr. Tesco. I was gonna. To be fair, I was gonna ask you that question as to why you brought in a 15-year-old into higher power, but.
Jenkins, why are you just walking into the room now? We've all been here for 15 minutes waiting for you. Yeah, Jenkins, I think it's quite unprofessional to be late. I mean, this is a pretty big... Yeah, this is a big meeting, Jenkins. I mean, if you don't want me putting a 15-year-old in your role, then you better watch out, buddy.
I've been with the company for 33 years. Look, I had a bad burrito. I had to go to the toilet. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't have my phone on me.
What store did you buy the burrito from, Jenkins? Yeah, I mean, it would be really informative for us if you'd let us know what store that you got the. Yeah. Well, Jenkins, what store did you get it from?
It was one of those it was one of those carts. It was one of those carts down in the city center. I think it was called a burrito cart. I don't know. It was a guy. He had a mustache. There was like an umbrella in the cart itself.
Oh, it sounds like he's not supporting the brand, sir. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, we all got our lunch today from Tesco's. Yeah, I mean, even I eat at Tesco's, Jenkins. I mean, I go down there for my shopping every day. You'd think I'd go to Waitrose. I mean, look at me. This is a Rolex.
You got the Rolex at Tesco?
You goddamn right I did.
What?
Lost and found. I've got access to all our lost and found, buddy.
I don't shop at Tesco the entire time.
Ooh, dearie me. Oh dear.
What?
Oh dear.
We see a 15-year-old walk in. Oh dear. Looks like I'm taking your job. Who the fuck is this?
I mean, that's Peter's nephew here. Yes, that's my nephew. He's here today. I thought he might get a job out of it. Yeah, that was smart, Peter. Peter's a smart guy. What can we say?
Am I getting fired?
If you were me, would you fire you and employ a 15-year-old boy?
No.
That's the kind of ballsy answer I've been waiting for from you.
What you mean it?
Yeah, you goddamn right. What's your job title now? Chief of Operations?
Yeah.
How about double Chief of Operations? You're going up in the company.
God. So, Mr. Tesco, I've got to be honest with you. I was a little bit nervous coming into this board meeting today. I was a little bit worried. I was up all night just smoking weed. This is just great. Like,
yeah, we all were. Yes, even me. We cut to a news studio where they're doing it's a financial news station. So Tesco goes further into the red today with further reports of smoking them dank doobies up in the boardroom. Is that correct, John?
And cut. Graham, can I have a word with you? Graham, it's a show, all right? It's a show. Just read what's on the monitors.
Sure, I mean, I'm reading. I'm just not quite processing, I guess. I feel like even if we are saying, and this is me talking as a presenter, and I'm not a writer. You're a writer, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And 99% of the time, the copy that's coming through on that ticker, phenomenal. You know, I don't have a problem with 99% of it. It's just I feel like maybe we could be saying rampant drug use.
Okay, well, the main problem I have with you is that you're not saying the lines. You know, it kind of feels like you're not taking them seriously. Dank doobies, okay, dankers.
That's it. I'm seeing that. Did you say dankers?
Yeah, dankers. Is it okay if I can change it to dankers? The dankest of dagger doobies. That's really good. That's really
Again,
good.
I feel like this is more of, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's good writing. I just feel like it's more of writing maybe for your personal Twitter account and not for the financial news. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like our audience skews older, generally speaking, and I don't want people to get lost. So, you know, when, I mean, like here, like where it says like I'm supposed to do surfs up at the end of the show. Yeah. I'm not sure that's going to connect, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, if you want to, no. I think, okay, I loved the additional hand motions. I think that would be great. Can we just go back to the Dank Doobie line, and I'll change it, and just go from the top, and we'll just see how it feels, okay?
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure.
All right, just read it again. Just read it again, all right?
So Tesco goes further into the red today as there are continuing reports of people smoking. Whoa, John.
Okay, cut. All right, cut. All right, Graham, what's the problem?
That says in brackets Jamaican accent at the start of it, and I was always starting to do it. I was feeling uncomfortable.
You were doing really well. You just
Yeah.
needed you were like 30% doing it, and then you just sort of looped over. You just looped out. You just looped over the bridge.
Because I checked in with my brain for a second and realized that that wasn't okay.
All right, we can do a different accent.
Do we need accents on the financial news, John?
Hey, more and more elderly people know what Twitter is. More and more elderly people need to learn the lingo. Okay,
Sure.
if these are what the kids are saying, the elderly gentlemen and gentle ladies of the world need to know. All right, I'll change it. I'll change it.
When you're right, you're right. You're right. You're right. Okay, cool.
I'll change it. I'll give it a little. I'll give it a little bit of pizzazz. All right, here we go.
Sure.
Right.
So Tesco slides further into the red today as we hear continuing reports of rampant drug use, just like a mama used to do.
We cut to a house where we see like a grandfather and his 16-year-old grandson. Financial news is boring, isn't it? We can just turn that off.
Whoa, Granddad, this show's just starting to pick up a little bit.
Well, I really just wanted to talk to you man to man, if that's okay.
Ah, geez. Okay. I guess let's turn the TV off for a minute then.
I'll turn it. Oh, okay, much faster than I am.
Hey, I've got these young hands.
Yes, you do, and I've got these old, withered, skinless hands. And
oh, geez, Grandpa, again about the skin. You know you're not allowed skin until you use it responsibly.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
I'm sure.
I've been using up my skin to try and impress you. I'm not as hip or as fast as you and your friends, but I want to join in, and I want you to be proud of me, Bill.
Grandpa, I'm so proud of you. You fought in the Vietnam War, you know?
No, that's not good enough. I want to be in with the kids. I want to. I want you to be impressed by me. I can't ride a skateboard because of my old withered legs and my skin.
Geez, Grandpa, I mean, you know, one of the reasons that we don't like hanging out with you so much, and don't get me wrong, you know, I do like coming over, I do like hanging out, but you're such a misery guts about everything. Yeah, you don't have skin on your hands anymore because you scraped it all off when you were skateboarding. Yeah, you got withered, bony old legs that can't be good for nothing at all. But, you know, cheer up.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe the key to you respecting me is to maybe be a little bit happier. But you know, I didn't just have all this skin off from skateboarding. A flamethrower accident in D-Day really chiseled the left hand off.
Wait, Grandpa. Number one, you fought in World War II and Vietnam, which I always forget. But also, what were you doing with a flamethrower on D-Day?
You'd be that's all misery, isn't it? That's all.
We cut D-Day, where this is an administrative office on British soil, and we're sitting in an office together. Well, we need to make sure that one of the things that we always forget when we're ordering parts for tanks is to make sure that we've got enough screws, because the last time we had an order which was slightly under in terms of screws, it was catastrophic further along in the pipeline. And this is one of the things about logistics planning that you've got to remember, is that it's really difficult to make sure that you've got all of the component parts really put together correctly. Whoosh! A German bashes through the door with a flamethrower. I see you are planning more screw shipments.
Sorry, could you stop a sec? Sorry, Mr. German man. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just this conversation that myself and the Colonel were having was really starting to get interesting. Do you mind if we just finish this off real quick?
Oh, yeah. What are you talking about?
Oh my God, it's we're talking about the loose screws in a tank component, and that like further down the line, further down the line, it just doesn't. The components just don't add up, and then it's worn over time, right?
Yeah, you see, now you're getting it. This is the thing about logistics, supply chain planning. Oh, this sounds far more interesting than I had given it credit for. Let me just place my flamethrower precariously on the table. Is it okay if I put it near you?
Yeah, sure. Just put it on top of my left hand.
Oh, yeah. This is a good idea. Anyway, as I was saying, if you'd like to, I mean, was it Hans? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's Hans. Yeah, we all called Hans.
What do you mean you're all called Hans? What all German spies are called Hans?
It's like John in English. It's one of those common names where we say everyone's called Hans. Everyone's called Mohammed in the Middle East.
Wow.
Yeah, Hans, if you'd like to just grab a coffee or something. Oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Thank you.
We cut back to the grandfather in the house of the grandchild. And that was the day that I sympathized with the German army.
Whoa, Granddad. I didn't realize you were...
I'm sorry, it's a bit too depressing and misery-bitten for all you youngsters, I understand. I should smile a bit more. I get it.
Yeah, you should. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know how you smile all as a Nazi sympathizer. I didn't realize that until...
Whoa. I just want to point something out there. I'm a German army sympathizer, not the Nazi party sympathizer. That would be wrong. That would be so wrong.
The German army were representing the Nazi party in World War II, Grandpa.
And that's a shame.
What do you mean that's a shame? Are you like pro-Viet Cong but anti... I don't even...
we cut to Hanoi in the early 70s.
In Vietnam. Delta, yeah.
Yeah. And we're in the American headquarters, and we see two colonels. So, okay, I've written down the components of an AR-17 air firefighter.
Oh, fantastic.
And it is, can I just say, this just livens things up for me. Just the way you're explaining it. And, some officers might call this boring. I love it. I love this.
Hey, fantastic, John. That's great to hear, because the thing you need to remember about logistics and supply chain planning is you're never going to have enough of... Boosh! Hey guys, I just need somewhere to put this flamethrower. It sounds like you're having a really important meeting in here, so if I could just plop this down somewhere, John.
Did you can leave it on my left hand. That's fine.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah.
Did,
Well,
did,
I'll let you get back to it because this sounded pivotal in terms
thank
of
you.
strategy. So good stuff, guys. Hey, thank you for your service. And hey, John, we don't say this enough to each other. Thank you for your service.
What does that mean?
You know, in a military way. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks. Thank.
Well, yeah, thank me for my service as well.
So, it just kind of sounds a bit ominous. Thank you for your service. Like that's
What do you mean? What do you mean? It sounds ominous. This is what people say to people in the military.
yeah. Not when they're not when they're both in the military. They might say when there's a
We
veteran.
can make it a thing, John. There's nothing wrong with thanking each other.
All right. Look, just please don't replace me with a 15-year-old army sergeant like you did with the rest of the troop.
Whoosh. Who me, duder?
That's our show. Who me, duder? Great, love it.
Stuff.
Oh, that was fun. It's been a long time since we did some improv together.
Yeah, it has.
Oh, Max, I think we're going to call it there.
Cool.
Thank you for, yeah, really, really great conversation. Great experience, great notes, great conversation in general, and a gosh darn good improv scene. Hey, Max, thank you for your service.
Stuff.
Is there anything that you want to plug at all that maybe other people can watch online, or anything from that's coming out that you're doing?
Nothing that I'm doing specifically at the moment because I guess a lot of stuff is obviously on. Well, I mean, there's stuff online. I don't really do a lot of like online shows or anything particularly, but I would always recommend people to look up the Backline podcast, which is Rob Norman, which is one of the guys that I mentioned. Also to look up Toronto Improv Community on Facebook has a lot of great. I mean, obviously it's better for people in Toronto, but it's got a lot of great shows going on. Kirk McCullough is someone that produces a lot of good shows online at the moment. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like interactive shows and online shows happening here, but I don't get into too many of them myself at the moment because it's just not. It doesn't give me the same joy as doing it in person. Unfortunately. Yeah.
Very, very true. Very true.
But I'll let you know if anything comes up, which people can see online in particular.
Awesome. And from me, I do a show with a team called Boat Club that do shows every Monday night on YouTube. Just type in Boat Club. It's just 3 guys doing improv. John McInnes also is in a team called Couch. He does shows every Tuesday on their Facebook channel. Definitely check it out, Couch. And for more Bristol long form comedy content, check out the rest of the YouTube. I don't know where it is on my screen. It's probably somewhere over here, but there's videos and other interviews with nice people and shows like the Billy Boys and Gotica. I've been John Gallagher Portero. You've been...
Oh, my name is Max Francis.
And we'll see you soon. Bye.